There's a stretch of old Route 66 in western Arizona that truckers avoid after midnight. Most will pull over at the Love's travel stop in Kingman and wait till dawn before continuing. They'll blame it on fatigue or engine troubles, never admitting the real reason. But I know why. And after what happened to me last October, I won't drive that road at night either. I'm not some superstitious fool. I've been hauling freight across the country for 23 years. I've seen mirages on sun-baked highways and pulled over for more than my share of hitchhikers. Until last year, I would have laughed if you told me about phantom riders or highway ghosts. I was making a Denver to LA run, carrying industrial refrigeration parts that were already 3 days late. A jackknifed semi near Flagstaff had backed up I-40 for hours. By the time traffic cleared, I was looking at missing my delivery window unless I drove straight through the night. My dispatcher was breathing down my neck, so I decided to take the old highway, Route 66, to avoid any more interstate delays. It was about 2 a.m. when I passed through Kingman. The moon hung full and heavy over the desert landscape, painting everything in silver and shadow. My thermos was empty, and the radio stations had dissolved into static, leaving me alone with the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional glint of an animal's eyes from the scrubby landscape. That's when I saw her. She was standing at the edge of a curve, thumb out, a small duffel bag at her feet. My high beams caught her denim jacket, her long dark hair stirring in the desert breeze. I almost didn't stop. Company policy and common sense both advise against picking up strangers, especially on deserted roads in the middle of the night. But something about the slump of her shoulders made me ease off the accelerator. She looked tired in a way I recognized deep in my bones. I pulled over about 20 yards ahead of her. In my side mirror, I watched her pick up her bag and walk toward my rig. Her gait was uneven, like she'd been walking for miles. I reached over and unlocked the passenger door, giving myself a mental reminder to keep the conversation light, the driving focused.
Thanks for stopping.
She said as she climbed in. Her voice was raspy, like she'd been breathing dust.
Not many people do these days.
Up close, she looked to be in her early 30s. Her face was pretty but weathered, with faint lines around her eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She wore no makeup, and her fingernails were short, practical. Nothing about her seemed threatening.
Where are you headed?
I asked, pulling back onto the empty highway.
Los Angeles.
She said, settling her duffel bag between her feet.
Going to see my sister. She just had a baby.
I nodded. LA was my destination too. We fell into the easy conversation of strangers who don't expect to see each other again. Neutral topics, nothing too personal. She told me her name was Marie, said she was a nurse but was between jobs. I talked about my kids back in Nebraska and the audiobook I'd been listening to. Normal stuff. About 20 minutes into the drive, I noticed the temperature dropping in the cab. October nights in the desert can get cold, but this was different. A damp, penetrating chill that made my knuckles ache on the steering wheel. I turned up the heat.
You mind if I smoke?
Marie asked. Before I could answer, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke, though I hadn't seen her light one.
Actually, I'd rather you didn't,
I said, glancing over at her. That's when I noticed the first strange thing. Her clothes were different. When I'd picked her up, she'd been wearing a denim jacket over a white t-shirt. Now she had on what looked like a faded floral blouse with pearl snap buttons, the kind my grandmother used to wear. I blinked hard, wondering if the overnight driving was getting to me.
Everything okay?
She asked, tilting her head. Water dripped from her hair onto the seat, though there hadn't been rain for weeks.
Yeah, fine,
I muttered, turning back to the road.
Just tired.
Marie started telling me about her sister in LA, how they'd grown up in Flagstaff, how she was trying to make it to the hospital before her nephew was born. As she spoke, her accent changed subtly, taking on a twang I couldn't place. The digital clock on my dashboard flickered, the numbers scrambling before resetting to 2:47 a.m. The road ahead stretched empty across the dark landscape. We were in one of the most desolate sections of the route, miles from the nearest town. My headlights caught a faded billboard advertising a motor lodge that I knew had been demolished in the 90s.
You ever been to the Blue Swallow?
Marie asked, as if reading my thoughts.
Best little motel on Route 66. My boyfriend and I stayed there on our way to California. Summer of '72.
I frowned. The Blue Swallow was in New Mexico, not Arizona. And if she'd stayed there in 1972, Marie would be in her 70s, not 30s.
I think you're confused.
I said slowly.
The Blue Swallow's about 500 miles east of here.
Marie laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to echo in the cab.
Oh, honey, I know exactly where I am. I've been on this road a long time.
When I looked at her again, her appearance had changed completely. Her dark hair was styled in a bouffant with a scarf tied around it. Her blouse had shifted to a fitted dress with a pattern that hadn't been fashionable since the Kennedy administration. The duffel bag was now a vintage hard-sided suitcase. My throat went dry.
Who are you?
I managed to ask. Marie turned to face me fully. In the green glow of the dashboard lights, her skin looked waxy, her eyes too dark.
Just a girl who needed a ride,
She said.
just like all the others.
My hands gripped the wheel so tight, my fingers went numb.
What others?
All the Marys,
She said, as if this explained everything.
all the Janets and Susans and Brendas. We're all just trying to get where we're going.
The cab had grown so cold, I could see my breath. Outside, the night seemed to press against the windows like something solid. The headlights illuminated a green mileage sign that read Los Angeles 287, though I knew we were at least 400 miles from LA.
You're not real.
I whispered. She sighed, a sound like wind through dry grass.
I'm as real as this road, as real as all the men who've offered me rides since 1957.
1957.
I repeated.
The year I died.
She said matter-of-factly.
About 5 miles up ahead, actually. Right where Coyote Wash crosses under the highway. My boyfriend was driving too fast. He'd been drinking in Kingman. The car went through the guardrail. He walked away. I didn't.
The story hit me like a physical blow. Everyone who grew up around these parts knew about the wash. A sudden dip in the landscape where flash floods had been known to sweep cars right off the highway. There were always flowers there, though no one seemed to know who left them. Marie was watching me with those two dark eyes.
Usually I just ride along for a while, then disappear. A little scare for the driver, a little company for me. But you're different. You look like him, the boyfriend. When I saw your truck coming, I thought maybe the universe was finally giving me a chance to balance the scales.
My mouth went dry.
What does that mean?
Her hand touched my arm, ice cold through my sleeve.
It means you should have stopped in Kingman like the other truckers.
The steering wheel jerked under my hands, pulling hard to the right. I fought it, but it was like wrestling a living thing. Outside the windshield, I could see the wash coming up, a black cut in the landscape. The guardrail gleamed dully in my headlights. Marie's voice had dropped to a whisper.
I've waited so long for someone like you, someone who could take my place.
I stomped on the brakes, but the pedal went straight to the floor. The speedometer was climbing, 70, 80, 90. The steering wheel burned cold under my hands.
Please,
I gasped.
I've got kids.
Something flickered across her face, a moment of uncertainty. The truck shuddered as if passing through a wall of resistance. For a split second, I saw Marie as she must have been in the moment of her death, young and terrified, her face a mask of betrayal.
He said that too,
She whispered.
right before he swerved.
The truck hit something, a pothole or debris on the road, and lurched violently. Marie's form seemed to shatter like glass, fragments of her scattering into darkness before reforming. When she solidified, she looked different, smaller somehow, afraid.
I don't want to do this anymore.
She said, her voice suddenly young.
I'm so tired.
The wash was seconds away now, the guardrail rushing toward us. With a strength born of pure terror, I wrenched the wheel to the left. The truck skidded, tires screaming on asphalt. I felt the back end fishtailing, the weight of the trailer threatening to jackknife us. Then, impossibly, we were past the wash. The truck shuddered back under control. I brought it to a stop on the shoulder, my whole body trembling. When I looked over, the passenger seat was empty. No Marie, no duffel bag, no evidence anyone had been there at all. Just a lingering smell of cigarette smoke and something else, a floral perfume that reminded me of funeral homes. I sat there until dawn, unable to move, watching the sky lighten over the desert. When I finally pulled back onto the highway, I passed the spot where the wash ran under the road. Someone had placed fresh flowers by the guardrail, white lilies tied with a blue ribbon. I delivered my freight 8 hours late and took a week of unpaid leave after that run. Told my dispatcher I'd come down with food poisoning. What was I supposed to say? That I'd nearly been driven off the road by a ghost? I've done some research since then. Turns out there was an accident at Coyote Wash in April 1957. A young couple heading to Los Angeles, the man walking away with minor injuries, the woman pronounced dead at the scene. Her name was Marie Lafleur. She was 26, a nurse from Flagstaff on her way to visit her sister. The boyfriend claimed an animal ran in front of the car, causing him to swerve. No charges were filed. I still drive Route 66 sometimes, but never that stretch after dark. Last month, passing through Kingman in the daytime, I stopped at a diner and got to talking with a local. He mentioned the flowers at the wash, how they've been appearing for decades. Always lilies with a blue ribbon,
Strange thing.
he said, stirring his coffee.
About 10 years back, they found the boyfriend. He'd moved to Oregon, built a new life. Heart attack got him in his sleep. The funny thing was, the ME put time of death at exactly 2:47 a.m., and there was a blue ribbon clutched in his hand.
I didn't tell him about Marie. Didn't tell him how sometimes, driving late at night, I still catch the smell of cigarette smoke and floral perfume in my cab. Didn't tell him how I always stop now for every hitchhiker I see, hoping somehow to balance my own scales. Because that's the thing about the roads we travel. Sometimes we pick up more than just passengers. Sometimes the real journey isn't measured in miles, but in the ghosts we carry with us long after the ride is over.
The call about Grandma Ellie's passing wasn't unexpected. At 92, she'd lived a full life, though the last few years had dimmed her once sharp mind. My sister Danny and I hadn't visited her Victorian home in Oak Ridge as often as we should have. Life gets in the way, my software job in Seattle, Danny's medical residency in Portland. But now, as her only living relatives, clearing out her house fell to us.
Do you think we should just hire someone?
Danny asked as we pulled up to the sprawling 3-story house, its paint peeling around ornate trim that had once been Grandma's pride.
Not yet.
I said.
I want to go through her things first. Make sure we don't miss anything important.
The house smelled of mothballs and the faint trace of Grandma's rose perfume. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, streaming through lace curtains. We spent the first day sorting through the main floor, finding photo albums, collections of thimbles, and drawers of recipes written in her perfect penmanship. It was the second day when we finally tackled the basement. Grandma had always kept it locked when we were kids, saying it wasn't safe for children. As adults, we'd never had reason to go down there. The narrow wooden stairs creaked under our weight as we descended with flashlights in hand, the single bulb at the bottom casting weak yellow light.
Jesus, did she ever throw anything away?
Danny muttered, sweeping her beam across stacks of newspapers dating back to the 1960s. The basement was a maze of cardboard boxes, old furniture draped with sheets, and shelves lined with dusty mason jars. We worked methodically, separating items for donation, trash, and a small pile to keep. It was nearly sunset when I moved a heavy bookshelf and noticed something odd about the wall behind it.
Danny, come look at this.
The wallpaper pattern didn't quite match. I ran my fingers along the seam and felt a slight draft.
Is that...
Danny leaned in closer.
I think it's a door.
I said, my heart beating faster. I pressed against the wall, and with a scraping sound, a section of it swung inward. The smell hit us first, damp earth and something else, something chemical. Our flashlights revealed a narrow corridor stretching beyond the foundation of the house.
This can't be up to code.
Danny whispered.
Should we go in?
I asked, already knowing the answer. The passage was barely wide enough for our shoulders. The walls were packed earth reinforced with wooden beams that looked ancient. After about 20 feet, it opened into a small room with a dirt floor.
Oh my God.
Danny gasped. The room contained a metal desk, a filing cabinet, and walls covered with maps, newspaper clippings, and photographs connected by red string. A ham radio setup sat in one corner, its dials coated with dust.
Was Grandma a conspiracy theorist?
I picked up a file labeled Oak Ridge Disappearances, 1967-1973.
Look at this.
Danny called from the other side of the room. She was holding up a badge with our grandmother's photo.
Property of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, security clearance, top secret.
That's not possible.
I said.
Grandma was a school teacher.
Not according to this.
Danny opened a leather-bound journal.
Listen. June 12, 1969. Subject 17 showed unusual resilience to the treatment. Dr. Hoffman believes we may have found our candidate. The effects on the temporal lobe are consistent with our hypothesis, memory suppression holding at 94%.
My hands trembled as I flipped through the file I was holding. It contained photos of local people, many with missing stamped across them. With growing horror, I recognized faces I'd seen in our family albums. People Grandma had introduced as old friends who had moved away.
Danny,
I whispered.
what the hell was Grandma involved in?
The filing cabinet yielded more horrors. Detailed notes on experiments involving memory manipulation, something called Project Revenant, and coordinates for locations around town. Many were marked with small red X's. In the back of the room, we found a safe. Using Grandma's birth date, we opened it easily. Inside was a single VHS tape labeled,
"For my grandchildren, when the time comes."
We spent the night watching the tape on an old player we found upstairs. Grandma's face filled the screen, looking much younger than we'd ever known her.
"If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you found my work.
She began.
I'm sorry for the secrets. What I did, what we did, was unforgivable. But you need to know, the experiments in Oak Ridge weren't sanctioned by any government you know. We were contacted in 1967 by something that came through what we called a thin place in the woods outside town.
She described a classified program studying entities that could move between dimensions, entities that needed human hosts. Her team had been tasked with finding compatible subjects.
I got out in 73.
Grandma continued, her voice breaking.
I couldn't do it anymore. I took evidence, hid it where I thought it would be safe. But they're still out there. The program never ended. The subjects, the successful ones, they're still in Oak Ridge, living normal lives. Except they're not normal, and they're not alone in their heads.
The tape continued for another hour with Grandma naming names, the mayor, the police chief, prominent business owners, all carriers of these entities. She explained that the beings could lay dormant for generations before emerging, often in descendants,
I've watched over you both your whole lives,
she said finally.
tested you secretly. You're clean, but you need to be careful. They'll know when I'm gone. They'll come looking for what I took. The evidence is hidden throughout the house, in places only someone with Ellis blood can find. Complete my work. Expose them. It's the only way to close the thin place for good.
The tape ended, leaving us in silence.
This is insane.
Danny said finally.
Grandma was clearly suffering from dementia or paranoia.
I might have agreed, except for the newspaper I'd found in the hidden room. It was from last month with notes in Grandma's handwriting documenting unusual behavior in the children of the original subjects.
We need to keep looking.
I said.
There's more to find.
That night, strange lights appeared in the woods behind Grandma's house. Car doors slammed out front. As I peeked through the curtains, I saw the mayor and police chief standing on the lawn, looking up at the house. The chief's eyes reflected the flashlight beam in a way that human eyes shouldn't.
Danny,
I whispered urgently.
we need to hide the evidence, now.
We've been documenting everything we find, uploading it to secure servers. They've cut the power twice. Yesterday, someone who looked exactly like our childhood neighbor came to the door, asking questions about Grandma. Except Mrs. Branson died 10 years ago, according to the newspapers we found. If you're reading this, we're still in Grandma's house, piecing together her lifetime of secrets. Each day we find more hidden compartments, more evidence of what's really happening in Oak Ridge. The police have started wellness checks, trying to get inside. Last night I woke to find Danny standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me with an unnatural stillness. When I called her name, she snapped out of it, with no memory of leaving her room. We found a hidden door in Grandma's basement, and now we're trapped in her nightmare. The truth is scattered throughout this house, and we're running out of time to find it all. Whatever came through that thin place in the woods, I think it knows we're here. And I'm starting to see the lights in the woods moving closer each night.
I found Jason's camera last month while cleaning out Mom's attic. It was in a cardboard box labeled "Do Not Open" in his messy handwriting, shoved behind Christmas decorations and old tax returns. The camera was ancient by today's standards, a Sony Handycam from the early 2000s, the kind that recorded to mini DV tapes. It looked pristine, like he'd barely used it. The battery was dead, but the charger was there, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag along with 3 tapes labeled only with dates: 6/17, 12, 6/23, 12, and 7/4/12. For those who don't know the story, my brother disappeared on July 5th, 2012. He was 19, home from his freshman year at college, working a summer job at the state park near our house in rural Pennsylvania. He left for work that morning and never came back. His car was found in the employee parking lot, keys still in the ignition, but the extensive searches found nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play, no Jason. It destroyed our family. Dad had a heart attack the following year. Mom held on longer but eventually succumbed to cancer in January. I've spent the last decade trying to rebuild some semblance of a normal life, but those first few years after he vanished, I was obsessed with finding answers. I thought I'd looked everywhere. I'd searched his room, his computer, his social media accounts. The police had done the same. How had we all missed this camera? I should have watched the tapes immediately. But something held me back. Fear, maybe, or the knowledge that whatever was on them had been important enough for Jason to hide. So I put the box in my trunk and drove back to my apartment in Pittsburgh, where it sat untouched on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks. Finally, last Friday night, I hooked the camera up to my TV, inserted the first tape, and pressed play. The tape from June 17th started with typical footage: Jason filming his friends at a bonfire, someone's birthday celebration at a local diner, trees swaying outside his bedroom window. His narration was ordinary, commenting on the weather, complaining about his summer job. Then, about 20 minutes in, the tone changed.
So, this is probably stupid.
Jason's voice came from behind the camera as the frame showed the edge of the state park where he worked.
But I've been seeing something weird on my hikes. Probably nothing, but if I'm going to get murdered in the woods, at least there'll be evidence.
He laughed, but there was an edge to it, a nervousness I recognized from childhood when he'd try to joke his way through fear. The footage showed him walking along a hiking trail, occasionally panning around to capture the dense forest on either side. It was late afternoon, the sun low enough to cast long shadows between the trees.
I keep seeing someone watching me, like from a distance. At first, I thought it was a hiker who got lost, but
He trailed off as the camera focused on something in the distance. I paused the video and leaned closer to my TV. At the edge of the frame, partially hidden behind a tree about 50 yards away, was a dark figure. It was too far to make out details, but something about its proportions seemed wrong. Too tall, too thin.
see that?
Jason whispered.
That's the 3rd time this week.
He zoomed in, but the figure was just out of range, a dark smudge against the tree line. As Jason adjusted the focus, the figure seemed to retreat further into the woods, disappearing entirely.
Fuck this.
Jason muttered, turning the camera around to show his face. He looked younger than I remembered, his eyes wide with genuine worry.
I'm heading back to the ranger station. If you're watching this and I'm dead, Mom, the killer is a really tall, skinny dude who hangs out by the old fire tower. Love you. Bye.
He ended with another forced laugh and the recording stopped. I immediately loaded the second tape. June 23rd started differently. Jason's voice was hushed, his breathing heavy.
It's following me home now.
The camera showed the view from his bedroom window, facing our backyard and the woods beyond. It was dusk, the light fading rapidly.
I saw it yesterday when I was driving back from work, standing at the bus stop on Milford, just watching. When I slowed down, It was gone.
He panned to his desk, where he'd arranged printouts of internet research. I recognized the images immediately. The Slender Man. That creepypasta figure from the early 2010s. The tall, faceless man in a suit who supposedly stalked people through forests.
I know how this sounds.
Jason continued.
It's just an internet thing, right? Some Photoshop creepypasta bullshit. Except,
He trailed off, returning the camera to the window. At first, I saw nothing but darkness. Then he switched to night vision, and the yard lit up in eerie green tones. At the tree line, barely visible between two pines, stood a figure. Even from a distance, I could see what had terrified my brother. It was impossibly tall, at least 7 feet, with limbs too long for its body. It wore what looked like a dark suit, its head a pale oval without features. It stood perfectly still, facing the house.
it's been there for an hour.
Jason whispered.
I called Ryan and Derek, but they think I'm fucking with them. I tried to take a picture with my phone, but it doesn't show up. Only on the camera.
He zoomed in further. The figure remained motionless except for what looked like thin appendages extending from its back. Not quite arms, more like shadowy tendrils that wavered slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel through the recording.
I'm not crazy.
Jason insisted, his voice cracking.
I know what I'm seeing.
The footage continued for another 10 minutes, the figure never moving from its spot. Then, without warning, there was a brief static glitch in the recording. When the image cleared, the figure was gone.
Where?
Jason swung the camera frantically around the yard.
Where the fuck did it go?
The tape ended there. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely insert the third tape. July 4th, 2012. The last day anyone saw my brother alive. The footage began inside Jason's car, the camera positioned on the dashboard pointing at him. He looked terrible, pale, with dark circles under his eyes, his hair unwashed. He kept checking his rearview mirror as he drove.
If you're watching this, I'm probably dead.
He said flatly. No joke this time.
Or whatever happens to people when he takes them. I haven't slept in 3 days. It's always there now. Every window, every mirror, watching, waiting.
He turned the camera around to film through the windshield. He was driving through the state park, heading toward an area I recognized as the remote fire tower area.
I did more research.
He continued, his voice strained.
The things people call the Slender Man. They've been seen for centuries. Different names, different places. The Germans called it Der Grossmann. In Romania, it was associated with forest spirits that lured people away. In some accounts, it can make you forget things, make you do things.
He parked the car and got out, taking the camera with him. The footage became shaky as he hiked up a rarely used trail.
People say once it marks you, you have 2 choices. Let it take you or pass it to someone else by making them see it too. I can't do that to anyone, so I'm going to confront it. Maybe that's what it wants.
The trail led to the old fire tower, a rusting metal structure about 5 stories tall that had been closed to the public for years. Jason panned the camera around the clearing at the base of the tower, his breathing increasingly erratic.
I know you're here.
He shouted.
What do you want from me?
The wind picked up, rustling the leaves. The camera's microphone caught a faint sound, something between static and whispering. Jason's voice dropped to a whisper.
It says I have to climb.
He began ascending the metal stairs of the fire tower, the camera jolting with each step. The structure creaked ominously beneath him. As he climbed higher, the static sound intensified, nearly drowning out his ragged breathing. From the top platform, he had a view over the entire forest. The sun was setting, casting a blood-red glow across the landscape. Jason turned in a slow circle, filming the horizon.
There's so many of them.
He whispered in horror. In the distance, at different points along the tree line, stood dark figures, 5, maybe 6 of them, all unnaturally tall, all perfectly still, all facing the tower. One stood closer than the others, at the base of the tower now, its featureless face tilted upward.
The static grew deafening. Jason's breathing became more panicked.
No, please.
He begged.
I don't understand what you want.
The camera tilted wildly as Jason stumbled. There was a sickening lurch in the footage, a glimpse of the ground rushing up, and then static. Just static, for almost a full minute. When the image returned, the camera lay on its side at the base of the tower. The lens was cracked, but still recording. There was no sign of Jason, no body, nothing to indicate a fall, just empty forest growing darker by the second. Then, a shadow fell across the lens. Something long and thin, like fingers, but not quite fingers, reached for the camera. The image distorted, warped, and went black. The tape ended. I've watched those tapes at least 20 times now. I've taken screenshots, enhanced the images, consulted with video experts. Most tell me the figure is just a tall person in dark clothing, probably a friend of Jason's playing a prank. The more honest ones admit they can't explain the proportions, the lack of facial features, the way it seems to vanish between frames. I went back to the state park last weekend. The fire tower has been demolished since Jason disappeared. Safety hazard, they said. The trails have changed too, rerouted to accommodate new conservation areas. But I found the spot where I think he filmed that first sighting. I took pictures, hundreds of them, scanning the trees, the clearings, the shadows between trunks. I saw nothing unusual while I was there. It wasn't until I got home and downloaded the photos that I noticed something. In 3 separate images, taken at different locations in the park, there's a figure in the background. Tall, thin, partially obscured by trees. And last night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. with the overwhelming sensation of being watched. From my bedroom window, at the edge of the parking lot of my apartment complex, I saw it. Just like in Jason's footage, impossibly tall, unnaturally thin, faceless. When I blinked, it was gone. But my phone, which I'd instinctively grabbed to take a picture, showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number. When I checked my voicemail, there was nothing but static and what sounded like my brother's voice, distorted and distant, repeating one phrase.
Now it sees you too.
I'm writing this because I need someone else to know. The camera is sitting next to me as I type. I've been hearing static through my apartment walls all day. The lamps flicker when I enter a room. And twice now, I've caught glimpses of something tall and dark reflected in my television when it's turned off. I understand now why Jason went to confront it. The waiting is unbearable. If I disappear tomorrow, at least you'll know why. And if you've read this far, I'm sorry. Because now, maybe, it sees you too.
I used to laugh at those Reddit threads. You know the ones? People claiming they'd glitched into some piss-yellow labyrinth of endless office space. The back rooms? Just another creepypasta, I thought. Something for bored teenagers to obsess over between TikTok videos. I'm not laughing anymore. It happened on March 12th. I was helping my sister move into her new apartment. 3rd floor, no elevator. We'd been hauling boxes for hours, and I was carrying a heavy bookshelf when I tripped on the landing between the 2nd and 3rd floors. I remember falling, bracing for impact, but the impact never came. Instead, I felt a sickening lurch. Like missing a step in the dark, but 1,000 times worse. My stomach flipped, and for a split second, everything went black. Then the smell hit me. Damp carpet, old paper. That artificial scent of budget cleaning supplies that never quite masks the underlying mustiness. I opened my eyes to yellow. Endless yellow. The walls were that awful shade of nicotine-stained cream that was all the rage in the 70s. The carpet, moist and matted, smelled like it hadn't been changed since then either. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, some flickering erratically, casting shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. I thought I was hallucinating at first. Maybe I'd hit my head when I fell. But the steady hum of the lights, the feeling of the damp carpet beneath my hands, the stifling air, it was all too real. I was in the back rooms. Level 0, the lobby of hell itself, day 1. I spent the first few hours convinced I was dreaming. I wandered through identical rooms interconnected by identical hallways calling out for help. My voice sounded wrong here, flat and dead, like the walls were swallowing the sound. No response came, except for the constant background hum. That goddamn hum. Imagine the sound of fluorescent lights, but tuned to the frequency of your anxiety. It's constant. Even when you think you've gotten used to it, you haven't. It crawls into your skull and nests there. I tried retracing my steps, but that's impossible here. There are no landmarks. Every room looks the same. Every hallway leads to more rooms that look just like the last ones. I'd turn a corner expecting something different, only to find myself in a space indistinguishable from where I'd just been. By what I guessed was nighttime, there's no way to tell here. The lights never turn off. I was dehydrated, hungry, and terrified. I curled up in a corner, using my jacket as a pillow, and tried to sleep. The hum wouldn't let me. Day 3. I found water on the second day, condensation dripping from some pipes in a ceiling panel. It tasted metallic and wrong, but I was desperate. I've been collecting it in an empty potato chip bag I found. Not ideal, but it's keeping me alive. Food has been harder. I've found odd things, half a granola bar wedged between the carpet and the wall, a pack of stale crackers on a forgotten desk. I'm rationing everything, taking tiny bites, trying to make it last. Today I heard something, not the hum, something else, a sort of wet shuffling sound like soaked shoes on carpet. I froze listening. It stopped, then started again, closer this time. I didn't wait to see what was making the noise. I ran. Blind panic carried me through a dozen identical rooms before I finally collapsed, gasping for breath. The sound didn't follow me, but I know what I heard wasn't my imagination. I'm not alone in here. Day 7. A week in, I think. Time feels slippery here. I've been trying to create a map, using a ballpoint pen I had in my pocket to mark the walls. The ink is running out, and the marks don't seem to help anyway. Sometimes I'll return to a place I know I've marked, only to find the walls clean. This place shifts when you're not looking, when you're sleeping. I'll wake up and the room will be subtly different. A wall where there wasn't one before, a doorway that used to be on the left, now on the right. I've seen things too, just glimpses. Shadows that move wrong, ducking around corners just as I turned to look. Once, I swear I saw a hand, pale and too long with too many joints, pull back from a doorway as I approached. The worst part is the faces. Sometimes, if you stare at the patterns in the wallpaper long enough, they start to form faces. Not human ones. They watch you. I try not to look anymore. The shuffling noise comes and goes. I've started calling it the janitor, though I've never seen what makes the sound. Whatever it is, it seems more curious than aggressive. It follows sometimes, at a distance, but retreats if I turn too quickly. Still, I don't want to meet it face to face. Day 12. I found an office chair today that still rolls. It's a small comfort, but it's something. I've been pushing it ahead of me as I explore, using it to test the stability of the carpet. Some sections are soaked through and will give way under weight. I nearly fell through one yesterday. The floor beneath is just darkness. My hunger has become a constant companion. I've been licking moisture from the walls when I can't find pipe condensation. It's disgusting, but necessary. I had a breakthrough today. I've been noticing patterns in the hum. It gets louder in some areas, quieter in others. I've started following the quiet. It seems to lead me to more stable areas, with fewer of those watching faces in the wallpaper. The janitor is definitely following me now. It keeps its distance, but it's there, always just around a corner or in a room I've just left. Sometimes I talk to it, just to hear a voice, even if it's my own. I think it listens. God, I miss real human contact. I'd give anything to hear another voice. Day 15, I found another person today. At least, I thought I did. I caught a glimpse of someone turning a corner, not shuffling like the janitor, but walking upright. I called out and chased after them. When I rounded the corner, there was just another endless hallway. I kept following, catching glimpses of movement ahead. Finally, I entered a large room and saw them, a figure standing with their back to me.
Hello?
I called out. They turned slowly. It had my face. Not quite right, the proportions were wrong, the eyes too wide, the mouth stretched in an impossible smile, but unmistakably my face. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When I finally collapsed, I was in an unfamiliar section. The carpet here is a different shade, darker, more brown than yellow. The hum is different too, lower, more like a growl than a buzz. I think I've wandered into a different part of the back rooms. The janitor is gone. I almost miss it. Day 18. I haven't moved much since my encounter with whatever that was. I've found a relatively dry corner and have been recovering my strength. My feet are blistered and raw from constant walking in damp shoes. The darker section has its own rhythm. The lights flicker in patterns here, almost like code. I've been watching them, trying to decipher some meaning. There isn't one. I know that logically, but it gives me something to focus on besides my hunger and fear. I found a break room today, an actual break room with a refrigerator and everything. My heart nearly stopped from excitement, but the fridge was empty except for a single bottle of water that had turned a concerning shade of green. The cabinets held nothing but empty coffee mugs and plastic utensils. Still, I took the utensils. The plastic forks might be useful, and one of the drawers had a dull butter knife. It's not much of a weapon, but it's something. The face thing hasn't appeared again, but I've seen other things that don't belong. A child's toy abandoned in the middle of a hallway. A single high-heeled shoe perfectly placed in a doorway. A desk with fresh flowers in a vase. Actually fresh, not wilted or dead. These things appear and then disappear when I look away. I don't touch them anymore. The one time I did, picked up a cell phone I found on the carpet. It melted in my hand, turning to black sludge that left burn marks on my palm. The backrooms doesn't like you touching things that don't belong. Day 21, 3 weeks in this nightmare. My clothes smell like the carpet now, that mixture of mold and dust that clings to everything. I've lost weight. My belt needs an extra notch, which I made using the butter knife. I had a dream last night, the first real sleep I've had since arriving. In my dream, I was back in my apartment, everything normal, except all the furniture was covered in yellow wallpaper. My sister was there asking about the bookshelf I was supposed to help her move.
You never showed up.
She kept saying.
You just disappeared.
I woke up crying, actually crying for the first time since I got here. The dream felt so real, and waking up to these yellow walls was like falling all over again. After I pulled myself together, I noticed something had changed. There was a door in the room that hadn't been there before. Not one of the usual doorways that lead to identical rooms. An actual door, wooden with a brass handle. I approached it cautiously, remembering the melting phone. The door seemed solid enough. I placed my ear against it and heard something incredible. Silence. No hum, just perfect, beautiful silence. I tried the handle. Locked. I've been sitting here staring at it for hours, wondering if I should try to break it down. What if it's a way out? What if it's a trap? What if it's nothing at all? Just another hallucination from my starving brain? The butter knife isn't strong enough to pry it open. I need something better. Day 23. I left the door behind, marking its location as best I could. I need to find tools if I'm going to open it. The janitor is back. I heard its familiar shuffle yesterday and actually felt relieved. A known entity is better than the unknown horrors I've glimpsed in this darker section. Today I found something strange. A maintenance closet. An actual logical feature in this illogical place. Inside were cleaning supplies, a mop bucket, and, miracle of miracles, a crowbar. The supplies looked used, recently used. The mop was still damp. Something is maintaining this place. I took the crowbar and ran. It's heavy in my hands, reassuringly solid, both a tool and a weapon. I've been making my way back to the door, following my marks, when they're still there, and the memory of the path I took. On my way, I saw something that stopped me cold. A figure in blue coveralls standing at the end of a long hallway, its back to me. It was pushing a mop bucket. The janitor. It must have heard me because it started to turn. I ducked into a room before I could see its face, if it has one. I waited, heart pounding, until the familiar shuffling sound passed by. I'm hiding now, clutching the crowbar, wondering if I've made a terrible mistake by taking it. Will the janitor come looking for its stolen tool? Is it intelligent enough to track me? Too late to worry about that now. I need to find that door again. Day 25, I found the door again, though the room around it had changed. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips, revealing concrete underneath. The carpet was gone, replaced by bare subfloor. I didn't hesitate. I jammed the crowbar into the gap and pushed with all my remaining strength. The door resisted, then gave with a splintering crack. Beyond was darkness, pure, absolute darkness. No hum, no light at all. I stood frozen in the doorway. After weeks in the constant fluorescent glare, the darkness was both terrifying and alluring. What if this was just another level of the backrooms? What if it was worse? But what choice did I have? I was about to step through when I heard it. The shuffle. Close. Too close, right behind me. I turned slowly. The janitor stood there, its mop clutched in hands that were almost human but not quite. Too pale, too many joints, fingers too long. Its face was hidden beneath the brim of a blue cap, but I could feel it watching me. It raised one elongated hand, pointing at the crowbar I still held.
Is this yours?
My voice cracked from disuse.
I'm sorry, I needed it.
The janitor didn't respond. It just stood there, pointing. Slowly, I held out the crowbar. The janitor hesitated, then reached for it with those impossible fingers. As it took the crowbar, its cap shifted, and I caught a glimpse of its face. It had my face. Not the twisted version I'd seen before, but my face. Tired, scared, dirty from weeks in this place. I stumbled backward in shock, through the open door, into the darkness beyond. Day 30. I've been in the darkness for 5 days now. It's different here. No walls, no carpet, no hum, just solid ground beneath my feet and an endless void around me. But there's something else, a light in the distance, faint but growing stronger as I walk toward it. It doesn't look like the sickly fluorescence of level 0. It's warm, natural. I think it might be sunlight. I've been walking steadily toward it, stopping only when exhaustion forces me to. The silence is incredible after so long with that constant hum. I can hear myself think again. The janitor hasn't followed me here. Nothing has. I'm truly alone for the first time since entering the back rooms. The face of the janitor haunts me. My own face, looking back at me. What does it mean? Was it trying to warn me? Help me? Was it even real or just another hallucination? I may never know. All I can do now is keep moving toward the light. It's getting brighter. I can almost feel warmth on my skin. After a month in the damp chill of level 0, it feels like a miracle. I think I'm going to make it out. God, I hope I'm right. If anyone reads this, if you find yourself in a place of yellow walls and wet carpet and buzzing lights, don't give up. Keep moving. Look for the patterns. And if you find a door that shouldn't be there, sometimes you have to be brave enough to go through it. The light is close now. I can see details, trees, I think, a sky, colors that aren't yellow or brown. I'm running now toward the light, toward home. This is the last I'll write. Either I make it back to our world to tell my story in person, or I don't make it at all. But know this, the back rooms are real, and it is possible to escape. Addendum found scrawled on the back of the final page. I made it out, but something followed me. Sometimes out of the corner of my eye, I see yellow wallpaper where there shouldn't be any. And at night, if I listen carefully, beneath the normal sounds of my apartment, I can hear it. The hum, it never really leaves you. Nobody believes me when I tell them what happened at Skinwalker Ranch. They think I'm chasing YouTube views or angling for a book deal. The university disavowed our research. My colleagues either won't speak to me or are dead, but I need to document what happened before they find me too. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen. 6 months ago, I was a tenured professor of parapsychology at Northwestern. Today, I'm typing this from my fifth motel room this week, paying cash using public Wi-Fi, and looking over my shoulder every 5 minutes. It started with an email from Dr. Elaine Hoffman, a former student of mine who'd gone to work for a private research foundation. The Kessler Institute had apparently acquired Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, 2,000 acres of the most paranormally active land in America, and was assembling a research team for a 2-week expedition. The budget was substantial, the equipment cutting edge, and the opportunity unprecedented,
We're not just documenting phenomena anymore,
Elaine wrote.
we're attempting contact.
I should have deleted that email. 7 of us arrived at the ranch in early March. Myself, Elaine, Dr. James Porter, a physicist specializing in quantum field theory, Denise Mitchell, our equipment specialist, Carlos Vasquez, a cultural anthropologist with knowledge of indigenous beliefs, Trevor Wilson, our security consultant, and Sarah Kim, a gifted medium who'd participated in previous studies at my lab. The property was beautiful in a desolate way. Rolling hills, homestead-style buildings, and a pervasive silence that felt expectant rather than peaceful. We set up our base in the main house, establishing a control room filled with monitors, sensors, and recording equipment. The first 3 days were uneventful. We documented the usual oddities associated with the place: battery drains, equipment malfunctions, mysterious lights in the sky, but nothing beyond what previous researchers had encountered. Elaine grew increasingly agitated.
We didn't come all this way to document more of the same.
She said during our evening meeting.
The Institute wants results.
That's when she revealed what had been shipped separately from our other equipment, a device resembling a satellite dish connected to a series of amplifiers and a quantum computer. She called it a consciousness amplifier.
We've been developing this based on research from the Monroe Institute and classified DARPA projects.
She explained.
It magnifies human consciousness like a radio transmitter, broadcasting our thoughts and awareness across dimensional barriers.
Carlos immediately objected.
You can't just blast a signal into the unknown and expect nothing bad to happen. The indigenous peoples who lived here considered this place powerful but dangerous.
He continued.
The Ute specifically warned against speaking the name of skinwalkers aloud because it draws their attention. And you want to broadcast our consciousness like a beacon?
Elaine dismissed his concerns.
That's precisely why we brought Sarah. She'll be our receiver, tuned to pick up whatever responds.
I should have sided with Carlos, but the scientist in me was intrigued. We'd been studying paranormal phenomena for decades with little progress. Maybe a more active approach was warranted. The next night, we set up the amplifier in the center of what Elaine called a hotspot, an area where previous researchers had documented intense activity. We positioned Sarah in a comfortable chair within a circle of sensors, monitoring her brainwaves, heart rate, and skin conductivity. The amplifier emitted a low hum as it powered up. The air seemed to thicken, making it difficult to breathe. Our equipment began registering anomalies: temperature drops, electromagnetic spikes, radiation fluctuations. Sarah's eyes rolled back, showing only whites. Her brain activity skyrocketed.
Something's coming through.
Elaine whispered excitedly. That's when Sarah began to speak, not in her voice, but in something ancient and guttural. The words weren't in any language I recognized, but they made my skin crawl. Blood trickled from her nose and ears.
Shut it down,
I ordered, but Trevor was already moving, pulling the power cables. The amplifier didn't stop. If anything, the hum grew louder, vibrating through my bones. The sky above us turned a deep, unnatural purple, swirling like a vortex. Our equipment exploded in cascading sparks. Sarah convulsed, her back arching impossibly. And then, silence. The amplifier died. Sarah collapsed. The sky returned to normal, though no stars were visible. We rushed Sarah back to the house. Her vital signs were stable, but she remained unconscious. The rest of us argued about what to do next.
We need to evacuate.
Carlos insisted.
Whatever came through that connection is here now.
That's exactly why we can't leave.
Elaine countered.
We've achieved contact. This is what we came for.
The argument became moot when we discovered the vehicles wouldn't start. No electronics worked. Not our phones, satellite radio, nothing. We were stranded. Sarah woke the next morning with no memory of what had happened, but she wasn't the same. She moved differently, spoke differently, subtle changes that became more pronounced as the day progressed. She kept staring at Trevor with an unsettling intensity. That night, the phenomena began. It started with sounds, scratching in the walls, whispers in empty rooms, footsteps on the roof. Then objects moved when no one was looking. Doors that were locked would be found open. We'd glimpse shadows with impossible geometries. On the third night after the experiment, Trevor disappeared. We found his flashlight at the edge of the property, still on, pointing toward the darkness. The beam revealed nothing but empty desert. We organized a search party at dawn. James and Denise took the north section of the property. Carlos and I headed east. Elaine insisted on staying with Sarah, who had developed a high fever and was muttering in that same ancient language. Carlos and I found nothing but animal tracks that stopped abruptly, as if the creatures had vanished mid-stride. When we returned to the house, James and Denise hadn't come back. Elaine was alone, shaking in the control room.
Sarah's gone.
She whispered.
I just turned my back for a second. She couldn't even walk on her own this morning.
That night, the three of us barricaded ourselves in the main room, backs to each other, watching the darkness close in. Around midnight, we heard Trevor's voice outside, calling for help. Carlos wanted to investigate, but I held him back.
That's not Trevor,
I said.
How can you be sure?
Carlos asked. The voice shifted then, becoming James, then Denise, then Sarah, cycling through them like trying on clothes, before settling into something that was all of them at once, a chorus of familiar voices speaking in perfect unison.
We want to come in.
The voices said.
We're so cold out here.
By morning, Elaine was missing. She'd gone to use the bathroom and never returned. The window was open, the screen torn as if something had pulled her through. Carlos completely broke down.
It knows us now.
He kept saying.
It's wearing their faces, using their voices. It's learning.
Somehow, miraculously, one of the Jeeps started that afternoon. We didn't question it, just threw our essential belongings inside and raced down the dirt road leading off the property. We were halfway to the highway when Carlos screamed. I looked over to see him clawing at his eyes.
They're in the car.
He shrieked.
They're right behind you.
There was nothing in the back seat, but Carlos was convulsing, fighting against invisible assailants. The Jeep swerved as he grabbed the wheel. I fought for control, but we went off the road, rolling several times before coming to rest against a boulder. I woke up in a hospital in Vernal, Utah. Carlos was dead. His autopsy revealed no cause beyond massive organ failure. I spent 3 weeks recovering from a broken collarbone and concussion. The ranch owner claimed we were never authorized to be there, and the Kessler Institute denied any connection to our expedition. I thought it was over. I was wrong. It followed us back. Or maybe it was inside us all along. The first sign was the dreams, where I was floating above my body, watching myself sleep. In these dreams, my mouth would move, speaking those same ancient words Sarah had channeled. I'd wake up with my sheets soaked in sweat, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Then came the distortions in reflective surfaces. My reflection would move a fraction of a second too late, or its eyes would track something I couldn't see. Sometimes, late at night, my reflection would smile when I wasn't smiling. I started seeing the others too. Trevor walking through a crowd before vanishing when I called his name. Denise staring at me from a passing bus. Sarah standing at the foot of my bed in the darkest hours of night, her eyes black pools. Always watching, always just at the edge of my vision. 3 weeks ago, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a thumb drive containing footage from our equipment at Skinwalker Ranch. Footage I hadn't known existed. Most of it was corrupted, but one file played clearly, the amplifier experiment. In it, I saw what happened to Sarah that night, what actually emerged from her. I won't describe it, I can't, but it wasn't Sarah who woke up the next morning. It wasn't Sarah who stayed behind with Elaine. It was never Sarah again. The file ended with a message typed across the screen.
We are coming for the rest of you.
2 days later, I read about Elaine's suicide, found hanging in her apartment, though the medical examiner noted her neck wasn't broken. Death by asphyxiation while conscious, with defensive wounds on her hands. I've been running ever since, changing motels every night, avoiding cameras, sleeping in shifts. Sometimes I think I'm just having a psychotic break. That would be easier to accept than the truth. That we opened a door at Skinwalker Ranch and something ancient and patient came through. Something that's still learning how to exist in our world, wearing our colleagues like ill-fitting suits, learning our weaknesses. I'm leaving this account because I think tonight is my last night. The lights in my motel room keep flickering, forming patterns I'm starting to understand. The mirror shows more people behind me each time I look. Trevor, Denise, Elaine, Carlos, Sarah, all watching with those same black eyes. Their mouths move in unison, counting down. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And if you ever receive an invitation to Skinwalker Ranch, burn it. Some doors aren't meant to be open. And if you see any of us smiling, beckoning, claiming to be survivors, run. Because it's not us anymore. It hasn't been for a long time.
End of transcript. Note: the above document was recovered from a public file sharing service 3 days after the disappearance of Dr. Marcus Chen from a motel in Flagstaff, Arizona. His current whereabouts remain unknown. The Kessler Institute continues to deny any knowledge of the described expedition, and property records show no change in ownership of the Skinwalker Ranch during the specified time frame. Attempts to locate the other individuals mentioned have been unsuccessful.